Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager, and we are out now with the latest swing state poll results from Bloomberg News and Morning Consult on the 7 battlegrounds that could decide the November election between President Biden and former President Donald Trump. It suggests that any post-State of the Union bounce that the president may have enjoyed last month is all but gone now. For more, we are joined by the national politics reporter who wrote the story on this month's survey, Bloomberg's Gregory Korte. Gregory, good morning. So we're back to where we started for President Biden. Is that what we're finding in this poll?
Good morning. And yeah, I think that's pretty much where we are. President Biden is certainly no worse off than he was back in January, February, when he trailed former President Trump by about 6 percentage points or so across these 7 swing states that we're monitoring. But as you say, he got a little bit of a bounce after a State of the Union address. People were feeling a little bit better about the economy last month, but we've had a couple of pieces of bad economic news, particularly around inflation. And we've seen that the president's numbers tend to move in lockstep with how people are feeling about the economy. And this is a pretty pessimistic electorate when it comes to the economy. And so we're seeing Biden falling back to that same place that he was a couple of months ago in trailing President Trump in most of these states.
As we've found in polls in the past, the economy has been the overriding issue, though we have seen immigration bump up as well. What other issues are voters thinking about as far as we've found?
Yeah, one thing that we saw in this month's poll is abortion getting a little bit more attention. Of course, when we were in the field with this poll this month, we had that Arizona Supreme Court decision that reverted back to the pre-Roe versus Wade law that was in effect beginning in 1864 that prohibited pretty much all abortions in the state, regardless of circumstances. And that resonated particularly in Arizona, of course, which is a swing state in and of itself, but really across the country. It's a mobilizing issue for Democrats, but it remains to be seen whether it's something that can really move the needle in persuading independents where the economy is still the number one issue.
And I suppose it's probably a little too soon to tell whether abortion has a trajectory to overtake some of those other issues, since it's about the first time we've asked about this. But when it comes to third parties like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., what are we seeing when it comes to where he could potentially draw support from?
Yeah, that's been a quite persistent question throughout this cycle is, can third-party candidates really make a difference here? And we continue to really kind of scrutinize the evidence to go deep into the crosstabs to figure out whether he hurts Biden more or Trump more. And it's still kind of hard to say, although the feeling generally is that Democrats are more worried, and that's partly because even though RFK has some appeal on the Republican side, Trump's supporters are pretty loyal to Trump. And even though they like RFK Jr., they will stick with him. Kennedy, of course, comes from a very powerful Democratic family. Has that name going for him, has a lot of appeal to Democrats. And, of course, Biden supporters aren't quite as loyal, are looking for alternatives, and Kennedy could be one.
And of course, we've seen the president throughout this campaign campaigning on the legislative initiatives that he's managed to get through. It hasn't really seemed to help him much in terms of getting voters out. But we did see a major initiative finally pass after a 6-month impasse on Capitol Hill in the form of billions of dollars in foreign aid and a potential forced sale of TikTok. Is there any indication from the polling that we're seeing, Gregory, on whether these sort of legislative victories are have a chance of cutting through for the president?
We'll have to see whether this foreign aid package will break through the noise of this election cycle. But as you suggest, when we have polled on specific items of legislation the president's gotten accomplished, things like infrastructure, the Inflation Reduction Act, the CHIPS Act to build more semiconductors and increase manufacturing in the U.S., none of those particularly resonate with voters. Not a whole lot of awareness. Now, of course, this is what the president's campaign is going to be doing over the next 6 months, is to remind people of these accomplishments, to tell him what he's done on the economy, to give it time for those to take effect. The foreign aid vote, there are some splits in the electorate of whether even people want to pay for it. One of the things we saw in this poll was that support for Ukraine remains pretty strong, but we saw a 10-point decrease in support for aid to Israel this time. People are tiring of the Israel-Gaza war. They want it to end. They want a ceasefire. And so President Biden still has some difficulties navigating on the foreign affairs front.
Really appreciate this, Gregory. Thanks so much for being with us. Bloomberg national politics reporter Gregory Korte with us on the just now out Bloomberg News Morning Consult swing state poll. We will have much more coverage on it throughout the day here on Bloomberg Radio, and you can read more on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg terminal.